excited to welcome you to our community chat after our little break we've had with the amazing Elaine. So while we are warming up, I'd love to just share a little bit more with you about why we're here today. So we are here for a Compass Chat with Elaine on using Compass tools with young learners, really thinking about those early learners in the younger years. And we're so excited that Elaine is going to be sharing her wisdom and experience as a coordinator for early years and with all of her vast experience with curriculum and visible thinking. So before we go ahead and get started, I think everyone here has some exposure to the Compass, but just in case, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and just do a brief overview of the Compass before handing it over to Elaine to start sharing her story. So here we are. So this is one of the systems thinking tools that Elaine is going to be talking about today, which is our favorite one, if I say so myself, at Compass Education. It's the Sustainability Compass, which to us represents a vision for how we as educators can create a more sustainable world by building sustainable systems in important parts of our world, in nature, as we try to live within the Earth's physical and biological limits, in society, as we try to create a just and equitable society that includes people from around cultures around the world, by looking at the economy and trying to have sustainable economies that are innovative and creative, and by thinking about individuals in those economies and those societies and their well-being, their health, and their happiness. So as I mentioned, today our focus is on a story from Elaine, her journey using systems thinking tools, the Compass, and more. And we're thrilled to have you all here to learn from her, but also engage in a conversation. So with that, Elaine, I'd love to hand it over to you, and let's get started.
Thanks, Gitanjali. I'm just so excited you see my big grin come up because I'm seeing faces that I'm familiar with. Tina, I want to give you a hug. Hi. And I can't see too many other faces at the moment on my screen here, just a few. But yes, as Gitanjali said, I am Elaine and I'm currently here in Doha, Qatar. I'm the Early Years Growth and Development Coordinator. I've been here for nearly 3 years now. And prior to that, I was in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. And I've lived in several other countries, including Laos and Germany and France and whatever. So a global person, so to speak, globetrotter. But I do want to start and talk about my journey with Compass. I do want to keep it casual. I'm by no means an expert, but I'm on a journey of learning as well. And I'm inviting you to come along with me on this journey also. So yeah, in thinking about that, just a few things I want to just point out. I'm living here in Qatar, Doha, and this is the holy month of Ramadan. So I don't know if anybody else from the region is in here, but just in case, I want to just point that out. And if anybody is eating or drinking on this call, just you might want to just probably turn your camera off if you want to eat or drink, but just to be respectful for the country that I'm currently living in, and yeah, be aware of that. Gitanjali, if you want to move on to the next slide, I can start my story. So today I just want to really keep it short. Just 3 points that I'm trying to bring up with you is, one, to share my story, my experiences using the tools or not, how I got involved with the tools, how my challenges with the tools at such a young age group, and then an aha moment, I guess, if you will. So that a shift I've had in my thinking over the last couple of months, particularly in pertaining to the tools and the age group of students that I'm involved with. I would like to invite you all to a conversation as well to participate. So the idea of these community chats is as if we're in a staff room or at the water cooler, right? So we will feel free to jump in and participate in the conversation as well. And then hopefully by the end to have generated some ideas and some possible actions and things that we can take away and probably use in our own settings. So next slide, Gitanjali. So Gitanjali already touched on that the Compass education tool is, I've got to get to my notes as well at the same time, so just give me a second while I pull those up too. The Compass education tool is a visible thinking tool, but also a tool to help us plan, discuss, manage. It's really a tool that can take us, take your thinking and your students' thinking in ways that help them connect to the ideas of sustainability. I was introduced to Compass in 2016 through a friend, Kate, and her passion for the Compass was so contagious that I just immediately wanted to get involved with this. And I started to invest, I signed up for courses, obviously, and then did my level 1 training. And in the process of that training, part of the assignment was to also produce something where you're integrating the Compass tools in your settings in your classroom. And so that's what I wanted to do. But the big question was how? When we know that young children, and you're probably very aware that, you know, I think it's Piaget that talks about it, pre-operational stage of cognitive development, you're probably all thinking like, how is she supposed to do that? Because when children are at that stage of cognitive development, there are obviously some limitations. For example, egocentrism, that the children have that inability to look at different points of view. Then the ideas around complex thinking, can they string together different ideas that have no unified concept? Or then the ideas around centering. Students struggle with the idea to consider more than one aspect of a situation at any given time, right? Or at one time. So how are we supposed to, or how was I going to talk about the Compass in early years and having students and try to involve students in the ideas of thinking about society, think about Earth, think about well-being, think about nature, and think about the economy, right? It was just so far away. And how am I going to bring that together? So I really didn't know. If you go to the next slide, I will share with you some of the first things I did was to, I guess, what we do as educators all the time is to sit back and observe and have a look at, well, what are the students actually presenting to me? What do I see? What can I observe? And some of you might recognize some of these children on the screen, I'm sure. But, you know, children connect with the world around them all the time. I'm currently involved in a blended learning research as well. And again, the results of that are coming out that children are always in the here and now, and that they are connected to their environment around them. But then my big question was then still, how do I connect and use the Compass tools that I know will benefit the learning then with the students? So next slide. I kind of decided to jump in and figure out, how am I going to do this? So I decided to record my very first conversation using to introduce the Compass tools. And I hope you have a little giggle with me here. Some of you might notice the voice of this little child. His name is Dara. And well, there's a few children, of course. I don't know how it is in your settings, but in the setting we were working in at the time, we had a free flow setup where children are allowed to go in all different classrooms, express themselves in different ways. engage with all the adults in the space. And I had a group of students around me at that time. It doesn't have to particularly be my class. It was a group of students whom I thought, oh, this group of students might work. It might work with these guys. Let me have a look and see how I can make these connections. And it was, as I always am, a little bit spontaneous, and last minute I was like, okay, we're 5 minutes before the break, but it doesn't matter. Come over here, guys. Have any of you seen this thing? And I drew this compass, kind of primitive compass shape on the wall, on the board. And Gitanjali, you can play the conversation for me, and then we'll take it from there. This is what happened. Double click, I think. Are you hearing it, Gitanjali? Because we're not hearing it.
No.
I'm sorry, are you unable to hear it?
It was working before.
It was. I'm sorry, everyone. I think we can fix this. Let's just adjust 1 second. All right, we're going to try one more time.
Okay. My question to you guys, has anybody seen something like this before? And what your ideas might be. We've got 5 minutes. Royce, have you seen something like this? So my drawing evolved as I was talking. It looks like a shooting star, doesn't it? Yeah, like a gem or a shooting star. Sometimes we see things like this in a circle. Has anybody seen that like that?
Yes.
Yeah?
I just see it. And last night I see.
You saw one like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it all the time.
And sometimes it's split up like this in 4 pieces like this. Has anybody seen something like that?
An X mark.
Like an X mark, kind of, yeah.
Like teacher, like
Missy Lane.
like a treasure right there.
Exactly, like as if the treasure's right there. X marks the spot. And sometimes on the treasure, and you know what I'm thinking? You're thinking exactly what I'm thinking. I've seen one of these, Honor. What do you need to find the treasure with?
A shovel.
A shovel.
No, a map.
Yes. You need a shovel, but you need a map. Exactly, nice and loud. And on the map, it tells you where to go. And at the top, sometimes you have the big letter. A big letter. What goes? Does anybody know what's at the top?
X.
You have this letter at the top of on the map. Oh, sorry, that's wrong. And on this one, you have this letter at the top. Does anybody knows what that letter stands for? That is the letter N.
And find a treasure.
N for the letter for the word north. 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 Can you say north?
No.
North. And you know what letter goes on the bottom? Anybody seen the letter that goes on the bottom? The letter on the bottom is this one.
I see.
And S.
I see.
And the S is for,
I see.
yeah, the S is for south.
I see that it's like in the hole.
You saw it at home?
South Pole.
Like the South Pole, yes. North and south.
North and
And on the two sides here, on the sides we have here the letter. What is it? E.
The North Pole.
The E for east. And on this side we have this letter. W for the word.
For me.
Ooh, it's in your name, that's true. But it's for the word west. For the word west. Can I hear you say west? West.
Like
So it comes north, south, east, west. that's really special, and I'll tell you more about that tomorrow, because we've got only a few seconds left before we count down. Yeah? Okay, so I hope you had a bit of a chuckle. It was a really interesting time after that, obviously. I worked with the kids a few days in a row afterwards to create a compass for the classroom. We made treasure maps, obviously, because we had to connect to what they were familiar with, right? So when he started to say X marks the spot, it was something he's been playing in school on several occasions already. So it was something that I could then latch onto and help them grow in that understanding of what a compass is. A compass leads us, helps show us direction. A compass helps us to stay guided and balanced and whatever. But then we then created, of course, I introduced then the compass words that we use for the sustainability compass as well. And we created a compass for the room. And I was then able to map some of my observations and things that the students would do onto the compass. Yeah, after talking about, well, you know, having them compare the directional compass to the sustainability compass and what we can use it for. And then just as I looked at made observations and documentation of students' activities throughout the school days, mapped that onto the compass with them. Another good way we used that was later when we had, you'll see the little teddy bear sitting there, was when the Global Ed teddy bear came to visit us, and we talked and we connected it to the sustainability goals, zero hunger, number 2. And yeah, we used the compass in that space as well to help talk through and use it with the students. So next slide. That same year, I went on to do the level 2, and within the level 2 training, during that time of that space, the early years were all involved in this rice growing activity, and I'm sure some of you will remember this too. And it was quite the intense, ongoing exploration. It was fabulous. It was fantastic. But the main point of that, one of the main points there, was that the kindergarten students that kept walking by every day past our rice growing adventure were wondering about what that was. And so I was able to arrange a time with the kindergarten teacher to have a chat with the kindergarten students about it. Now, immediately in my mind, of course, I needed a project as well, or an idea on how to introduce another compass tool into the classroom. So I used this opportunity to introduce my idea was to introduce the iceberg, and thinking about what that might look like. And I have to admit, it's not easy. I'm not saying that these ideas are easy, but what I can tell you is that given the time and the effort you put into it and the thinking around it, you can produce, you can engage children in thinking around sustainable habits of mind and sustainability. And I guess out of this conversation is what I want to encourage. So if you go to the next slide, Gitanjali, I went to the kindergarten classroom to talk to them about this. Now, first we talked about the project in general, why the kids were doing it and everything. And then I drew a iceberg on the board and asked them if they've seen anything like that before. So it was triggered by, of course, through the conversation. And once I had that point that I could say, okay, now we can talk about the iceberg, talking about the things we can see and the things that we can't see, then I took that opportunity to just launch into that part of the conversation. Of course, nobody could really connect to what I was trying to say. And I'm thinking like, I'm stuck. What shall I do now? I drew the squiggly line to show them, yeah, this is the water and this is the top and this is underneath, and they were still not connecting. And then I thought, what was going on at that point, around that time was the movie had come out, Happy Feet, if you're familiar with the movie Happy Feet. So I said, have any of you seen the movie Happy Feet? And about, 80% of the children on the carpet put their hand up and they said, yep, they know that story. So I ended up being able to connect to the ideas of the iceberg. I said, do you remember the iceberg in that? Do you remember how the penguins were sliding down the side of the iceberg and jumping into the water and diving into the water and all of that, and trying to help them connect that visual to the idea of the iceberg in general, that we can only see a top part of the iceberg, but way down low. We ended up talking about the krill in the sea and about the krill that were deep, deep, deep underneath the iceberg, and that were, we talked about 5 minutes just about the movie basically. But it gave me the in to help them connect to what an iceberg actually looks like, that it's a huge chunk of ice and you can only see a little bit at the top, and then bridge it into that conversation around what are the things we could see, and then bringing it back to, well, when we were talking about the rice, what can we see and what are the things we can't see? And we ended up talking about how rice, where do they get the rice, where do they get their rice from, do they grow their rice, because only a little bit of rice is available when we grow it by ourselves, but no, they get it from the market, and what do we need to do for that, and what that looks like. And we had this wonderful conversation about the things that they are familiar with in terms of that connection to economy, rice, food consumption, food processing, and so on, but then mapping it onto the iceberg. And if you click again, Gitanjali, our conversation kind of went into these 3 areas. So we talked about what we could see and then what we can't see. And my conversation with them, or my prompting with them, was just honing in on, well, what are the things we can see and what can't we see? And in their own level of thinking, I should say, these are some of the things that they came up with. And I left it at that. And in my reflection later on, I realized that, hold on, because at first I was a little bit disappointed. I was like, wow, that was so hard. It was so difficult talking to them about that. But I'm glad it went, and the children were engaged, and they were, they were asking questions, and they were conversing with each other, even though most of that conversation may have been about the movie to begin with, to understand what an iceberg looks like. But at the same time, when I looked closely at the image afterwards about what they came up with, I was able to recognize that those ideas around sustainable systems thinking and sustainability were actually there. They are apparent. So if you click again, Gitanjali, you could see that at the top, we were talking about events, and then the patterns and behaviors. You have to go to the market. We have markets. Those are things that we have to do, but we don't necessarily always see it. Or the children at this point don't see it, right? Remember, we're talking about from their perspectives. And then even getting into the point of the systems and structures, that we need the markets, but we have to have money to buy things and so on. And so I guess out of that, I was able to see that there are ways that we can use these tools in the classroom, but at the same time, it's also quite difficult if there's no big enough planning and thinking around it. And that's where then my aha moment came in a little bit more around, well, what if I can get this much out of a few students on a whim without big preparation? How much can I do if we've actually planned for it and we're intentional about it? We're intentional about the language we use. We're intentional about how we or what we want the outcome to be. And we're intentional about sharing and helping students develop an understanding that the world is a place that we share, it has finite resources, and in order for it to be a flourishing future, we all need to be part of the big picture. We all need to participate in this thinking. So a more recent event then, where the planning did happen a little bit and there was more thought into it, was here in Doha, actually, a kindergarten teacher who I shared the compass with and shared the ideas around the compass, how it's used and what that could look like. She then used this in her classroom. She was growing, she was very much into the gardening project in the school, growing tomatoes, taking the students in and out of the greenhouse. And yes, I know there's more around sustainability, but for students, often it's connected around environmental sustainability. So this is where the children were able to connect with. And in this same, in this project going in and out of the greenhouse, they also recognized bees happening, and then they started this big inquiry into bees and how does that connect to the our world, how does that connect to sustainable to the balance we need in the world, right? What happens if there are no bees? And they went into this inquiry together, and then with support mapped out some of their thinking, ideas and documentation onto the sustainability compass, to the point where we were able to integrate economy into that as well, where the students were able to plant tomatoes, harvest tomatoes, sell tomatoes, and the money that they generated, we were able to take to one of the Qatar Foundation NGOs, or NGO section of the Qatar Foundation, called Education for All. And they really were able to make that connection that the things that they were doing was contributing to a bigger purpose. That whole idea of globalization, think locally and act, act locally and think globally. So yeah, next slide. So now here I want to pause, I guess, and stop talking because I've been talking all the time, and just introducing some of the ways that I've been thinking about using the tools and what that looks like in early years. And yeah, it is difficult, but at the same time, it's also easy if we are in it together and we can share those thoughts and ideas together. And that's one of the things I really appreciated in some of the projects I did, being able to connect with other campus educators and generate ideas around what can be done in order for us to really bring home that thinking to the students. This on the screen is a project making paper. And while I wasn't involved, I didn't use the compass at this point for this particular project, I can't remember. But the ideas, what I put up there now is just an idea that if this was a project in your school or in your space, how could you use the sustainability compass or the iceberg to support this inquiry, to support the ideas and help students connect to the different sustainability habits of mind, or ways of thinking sustainably, ways of connecting to a bigger picture, a bigger idea, what that means. And I'd like to open the floor now to that conversation with you.
Great. I'm going to stop sharing so we can see each other's faces while we talk a bit more about all of the rich food for thought Elaine has given us. So, yeah.
Do some of you recognize? Yeah.
I was going to say, pulling from what Elaine just said, though, I think, are you also open to some questions on your experience as well as people's ideas for how they might approach this? Okay.
Elaine, I've been thinking a lot about how to make thinking more visible, like from a system standpoint, not even with the compass, like maybe just with connecting things. And like mind maps kind of come to mind. Is that something that you use in your classroom, and does that work with early years?
Absolutely. I think that, again, you know, being able to create, have the students involved in creating, if you want a big compass wall, I always envision a big compass wall where, you know, once the children are familiar with what that stands for on the wall, then to as they create and as they inquire into different things, or maybe even with the current unit of inquiry, some schools have concurrent units of inquiry, so the inquiries can go in very different ways. But if you have a focused unit of inquiry at one time, then you can actually map out some of the ideas as they go along onto your sustainability compass, or for that matter on the iceberg, having those conversations. That's my thinking, that's a possibility. But in general, I think when I'm thinking about implementation, I think the implementation, and that's what I was saying, coming to some of the aha that I had, was that it really is more about the pre-planning. If I can plan as a teacher ahead of time and ensuring that my inquiry is going to touch on all of those different areas of sustainability, then I am already setting a foundation for a fruitful unit of inquiry. I believe that keeping that balance and making sure that all of the areas are addressed, and then also highlighting those areas as the unit progresses, I think will help raise awareness in the students as well about what's happening, right? About helping them make those connections to what's happening or to what they're learning about. Because the learning will only happen with reflection, right? So you've got to have that dialogue with them as well, and helping them understand what it's all about.
I think that's really interesting, that it's not really even about necessarily them understanding the compass. It's actually about understanding the compass as an educator and making sure that you're touching on all those things.
Yeah. And I guess that's one of my bigger takeaways, is that as if you as an adult are aware of and can balance that and understand the balance, and making sure you're touching on in your planning, you've touched on all of these areas. I recently had I was recently observing in a PYP exhibition. Now I know that's grade 5, but at the same time, just listening to those students, their whole project, they were talking about, what was it? Was that the Lego? No, it wasn't the Lego one. I can't remember what they were talking about, but their whole project covered all, I remember making notes, their whole project covered all of the areas of sustainability. It was phenomenal. It was really great to see that they had actually touched on an economical standpoint of it, nature, well-being. It was all connected. Oh, it was about activities, sports activity. They had created a game to use, especially during lockdown and within the school when it gets hot out here in Doha in the hot season. We have red flag and children are not allowed to play outside. So they created a game that involved physical movement and physical activity. And they presented it. It was phenomenal. It was really great. But all of the aspects of the sustainability compass were part of that conversation. And I was able to point that out to them. But I'm thinking, you know, if we in early years also have that mapped out in the areas we want to touch on within a unit of inquiry, then making sure that we're documenting that and putting that in those sections of the compass, then we're also supporting the students' understanding, not only the students, but also the adults that visit the room or that look at the posts, or that, you know, if we're thinking of a post-pandemic phase when possibly parents and adults and visitors can walk the hallways and they see how the learning that is happening connects to sustainability mindset, then I think we're doing a good job. And yeah, I can talk more, but I want other people to share the conversation. I want. Who else is on the call with us? I can see, let me see. Feel free to pipe in, Tina, or Kate, or Melinda, or
you. And I have to say that what I'm taking away, because I know it really, I mean, sustainability compass, I've never used it in my classroom, but when I look at what is happening in the classroom and what we do, everything is covered. So it's just that we as educators don't make it visible. And I'm taking away the intentionality. And when you're doing provocations for the kids, so you know what you're looking for. And even though we, in our program, it's a child-led, it's student-led learning. But then you as an educator, if you know what you're looking for, you find it and you will see everything. And from just listening to you talking and looking at all the things that we did when you were here in ISPP with us, it's all there. And I like that you can actually find it if you're looking for it.
Absolutely. And thanks for that, Tina. Something else that I want to add at that point is that we're all aware that children learn from modeling, right? From they look at what we're doing, they copy what others are doing, and we as adults have to be super careful, obviously, about what we say, what we do. I remember even with my own children, when I was a young mother back in the day, and you know, sometimes when you're in your car with your husband or a friend or whatever, you could be talking about a person or about something else that happened. But when all of a sudden you became super aware that you've got little ears in the back, then you had to all of a sudden be careful about how you communicate. Children pick up on everything, and it's like that in anywhere, in the classrooms and in spaces, in the supermarket, whatever it is. So I feel like that age group, 2 to 7 years old, when they are still in that, like we say, that pre-operational phase of development, they absorb everything. It's a time when we have the possibility to imprint on them, ideas about sustainability and help them grow in an understanding that without our care, without our consciousness about what we're doing, then you know, things could go really badly in the future, right? So if the children we are teaching today are the leaders of tomorrow, the leaders that are going to be in charge when I'm in my whenever age I am, when I decide to retire, those are the ones that are going to be making the calls. And I have an opportunity now and a responsibility to be able to instill in them that understanding that we're in this together, and sustainable habits of mind is something that we all need to observe, to practice, and to know. And in doing so, they can make educated decisions moving forward. So yeah, and there's a lot of, something else that comes to mind is, you know, I work a lot or think a lot about unconscious levels versus conscious levels. And I feel like, or my understanding is that on an, you know, when you're imprinting onto students or imprinting in general, it's about that unconscious and conscious levels that they are able to learn through symbolic thinking, through metaphors, through stories, and all of these platforms or ideas or media that we can use to help them understand what sustainability is, because it's big and it's complex, and it's something, if we start now and help mold what that bottom level of the iceberg is your mind models. If we're able to imprint now what that looks like in the future, then we have an opportunity, we have a chance, right? We have a chance that the world can be a better place to live in.
Elaine, I wanted to say I really like your examples, because especially now as we're in remote learning, I hear a lot of what happens either with my teachers or my personal children's teaching online. And I've heard a lot of teachers, they don't get the answer they want and they say no. And I love how when you were listening to the kids, I love that you have that clip, that you kept that clip. That's so cool. But how you really accepted their thinking, right? And what is behind the compass? We want to get better thinking. We want to get better thinking. And like you were not a barrier to learning by going, no, it's not an X, no, it's not this. Yeah. No, it's not a treasure. A shovel? What are you talking about?
Of course you need a shovel if you're gonna go find a treasure.
But you led it so perfectly and they got there. Yeah. Within like 3 leaps, and then you had something to connect back. And I think that's what I'm going to take away is just a more enhanced understanding. Even I've done this with 4-year-olds and stuff, but I feel like I've taken away a lot. You mentioned several times, and I probably can't repeat them all, but about how you went into their world.
Yeah. You have to.
Connected to what they're experiencing, what they're interested in, but not giving up on where you want them to go. So thank you.
They will grow. You're welcome. They will grow into that, right? We have to understand that they're going to grow, and it's those incremental seeds we give them along the way.
On that note about growth, we're actually at the point where we should be wrapping up and thinking about ways we want to continue growing ourselves with the Compass tools of systems thinking. So are there any last questions for Elaine? We could do one more if anyone else wants to share or has a final question.
Are you the only person using the Compass tools in your school, or will the children easily meet it again as they travel through the school?
It's beginning. So we have had 2 people in our school trained, and unfortunately, we're leaving now that I think about it. But at the same time, there is one other person who is now signing up for the Compass level in training. So hopefully through that, we'll be able to have that continue. But yeah, ideally you'll need, more people in the school trained with the tools in order to ensure that thinking is continued, right? And that if everybody had that map, just like I always think about it like the PYP, right? You have your inquiry circle usually up in your classroom, or sometimes in some classes in some areas, or some kind of inquiry journey mapped out. But you can, if all classrooms had the compass, then that connection would be so much stronger. So it's just a matter of spreading the word. So I guess to answer your question, at the moment there are 2 people currently in the school in those upper grade levels, and some schools, our school currently now has a sustainability coach, but in not all schools do. But if schools have a sustainability coach, then that plug-in is there for all the different grade levels. Yes.
Great.
Elaine, I have a quick question about sustainability and as an educator. So do you need to get Compass trained? Do you have to get the course to be able to implement Compass education in your classroom, or are there some basic tools that you can use without the education?
Honestly, Sure, I can promote Compass education, or I speak highly of it, Compass education for sure. If you have a sustainability mindset and you understand how to use it, you could look at the Compass and figure it out for yourself and just use it for sure. But the people that I've introduced to Compass who have gone on the course and returned have come back so much more enlightened in their understanding. And it's like as if the penny drops, because even I can't explain it as well as I can for people to understand and take away and implement and do, as well as it is when they get it on the course. I don't even know what the magic of the course is, because it's definitely magic. But once the penny drops, you're kind of good to go. I don't know. It's just how it works. And I would highly recommend it. But if I can explain it to you and you would be able to get it, and you can see the Compass and you understand, you know, the components of well-being, nature, society, and how that fits together, you might be able to walk and work with it that way. But it won't be as in-depth the level you could get if you did the course 1 and 2.
Gotcha.
On that note, let me just share what we have coming up in terms of opportunities and reinforce what Elaine said about how we want people to use the Sustainability Compass. Our mission as an organization is to get 1 million educators using the Compass by 2030, in line with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So we're happy to support you. If you want to reach out, we can try to connect you with ways to do that. And just very quickly, before we ask Elaine to help us wrap up, if you are interested in learning some more about the Compass, systems thinking, sustainability, and how these tools can practically be used in learning, we have our next online level 1 course happening starting on June 21st. And that's currently open on our website, compasseducation.org, for registration. We also have some other shorter courses, which will be coming in the next couple of months, which are really focused on how to use systems thinking and the Sustainability Compass in your classroom. So there's one on young systems thinkers that actually Kath, who's on this call, helped put together, and Elaine is featured in. So these are opportunities to learn more if you would like to. And next weekend, at a time we are just finalizing now, we actually have another chat if you want to come learn differently about the Compass and systems thinking. We have Teresa Tung from our team talking about systems thinking and leading change. So if you want to come to that, feel free to just shoot me a message in the chat right now, and I'll get you the link to register and all set for that. If you want to learn more and you have other questions, you can also just ask me or Elaine or anyone else on the call. And Elaine, I want to hand it back over to you if you have any concluding thoughts to wrap us up.
Concluding thoughts.
Yeah.
Yes. What do I write down here? I think what I want to leave you with is that for a flourishing future, I find that a bit of a tongue twister, but for a flourishing future, I think we must have leaders in position that can move the needle. And I'm talking about the people who are in positions of power, and those people in positions of power need to have the understanding and the true meaning of sustainability. They need to be cognizant about the world around them at large, and not only just the here and now, but on an unconscious and a conscious level. I feel like they need to understand systems, nodes, loops, and impacts in order for them to be able to make well-educated decisions. And I feel like that, understanding the bottom level of the iceberg and the impact we can have as educators is huge. And I can't reiterate enough that we have an opportunity to teach, to model, and to show, and to document, and to have conversations with our young learners now in order for them to grow in that thinking as they develop and get older. So yeah, let's have children who are able to think systemically, act locally, and think globally. We have a responsibility.
Thank you so much, Elaine, for all of your sharing today. And thanks everyone for joining us and also sharing your ideas. Very warm welcome, and please take care. And we hope to see you again, maybe next week or soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.